Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our second day of this super exciting event. We're really pleased to have you here, and the sun is kind of tearing up. For those of you who are freezing, we've organized 2 gas heaters to come in later on. Hopefully they arrive quickly. We had organized about 8 heaters that turned out to be, never mind. We're super pleased to have here with us today Professor Serote, who is going to lead basically facilitate the whole day. And I thought what we could do is, instead of doing the usual academic thing of like, I sit here and drone, I can introduce him quickly, and then he will introduce the event, and then we can all introduce ourselves to each other. I think it was a mistake not to do it yesterday, I'm sorry. And it was only like in the middle of the night when I was thinking, what an incredible community. Like yesterday, it was just such an incredible experience, and how people came together completely spontaneously. And I thought, but why didn't we know each other's names and so on? So that was my bad, and I'm really sorry about that. So Professor Serote, very briefly, because his biography is super long, is someone who South Africans have studied at school, because he's one of our most famous freedom fighter poets, and he's a poet laureate. He's many, many things. He's published many incredible things and received many awards. I usually prepare something, but I haven't. I have a long list. I should have just flashed it up. Anyway, but he's also a co-founding member of ASEPS. He's our elder. And he's also a traditional healer. And he's many, many things, like I said. And he's amazingly enough agreed to lead us through this synergetic, wonderful thing that we're trying to do. So, Tate Serote, I really appreciate you being here, and then everyone else can introduce themselves.
Prof, thank you very much, and welcome to everybody. I have a little package of surprise before we start. Yesterday, I kept referring to Palestine. Today, I'll keep referring to Haiti. We have somebody, a daughter from Haiti, and South Africa and Haiti have a very, very, very close relationship, extremely close. I'll just tell it very briefly. When President Aristide was in trouble in Haiti because of CIA, I want to put it that way, President Mbeki intervened and called President Bush and said, I want to know where in the world is Aristide. We eventually found President Aristide in Jamaica. And President Mbeki ordered that he be brought here. But by then, he was already on flight. They did not know where to take him. And he was found somewhere on the continent, and he landed here. And President Aristide, being himself, became integrated into the South African society, to the point that when he left South Africa back to Haiti, he was extremely fluent in isiZulu. He was speaking isiZulu fluently. So I'd like to ask Jeffa to please come in front. We know her in different ways. Let's know her in this other different way. I've asked her that she should think a bit about what she will do tomorrow. So she'll come in very briefly and give us a little talk tomorrow. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. So for today, you can listen to what we're saying about your brothers and sisters here, and then tomorrow you'll join and then take over. Thank you very much. We have a sequence here in terms of how we'll approach presentations, because we would like to walk you through the whole issue of the people who are seated here, but within a context of the struggle, how it started. Before I go too far, I want to talk about Joyce. Because Joyce and I were in the underground for a very long time in Botswana. She was with her husband. We were in the same unit, different but same units, under same command. And I am fully aware of how the struggle impacted her. Joyce was a very vibrant young woman, active guerrilla in every respect that you can think about. So when we sit down and talk about reparations, and I heard that she was coming, I spoke to Veli and said, we'll talk about reparations, there's nothing wrong about it, but we'll also marry it to reconciliation. To say, South Africa needs to reconcile itself. People have paid very high prices for that to happen. And as we go along, I'll read something about the relationship between reparation and reconciliation. For now, let us have a broad picture. My brother here, he's been playing terrorist with me a lot. I spoke to him. As I was speaking to him, he disappears. And then I'd already given up that he's around. And suddenly says, how are you this morning? So let's give him a chance to give us a broad picture, which then, as everybody else follows to speak, it is contextualized within that context. You're on the floor, my brother.
Good morning.
Okay. Do you put it in? Is that okay? No. Okay. Good morning. Terrorist. The last time I heard of that name, of that word, it is when I was only 16 and I was with 10 other young people in the magistrate court in Captain Park, and being the youngest of the 11, what was later tagged as the Soweto 11. And the charge against us was sedition, alternatively terrorism. So I remember us entering the courtroom, Dr. Tharollo, when we were entering the courtroom, we were all in school uniform. The judge asked, am I supposed to be sentencing these people, these kids? And but he had the challenge. Unfortunately, that apartheid forced him to do that. And out of the 11 of us, then 4 of us got a prison sentence, and the rest got a suspended sentence. Of the 4, Soweto 11 was not, by the way, a soccer team. It wasn't. It was 11 of us, and I was accused, number 3. And then there was Sbongile Mkabela. Then she was Miss Mtembu, who was the only woman in our trial. And Dan Muntsitsi, who unfortunately passed on during COVID, was accused number 1. And then, accused number 2. Accused number 1 was Chief Twala, who has also passed on. And then there was then Dan Muntsitsi was number 2, I was number 3. Then there was Sbongile, and then there was Mefi Morube. And, we'll take a walk at some point and go to the Hector Museum. You'll see some of these pictures. And I was one of the most handsome. And then I had an afro, and so that's what happened. It's hot, so I'm like, it's cold, so I'd like us to warm up with a bit of laughter there. Colleagues, let me be quick, and I'm not being preemptive here. Some of us are still walking around with a hat, a deep hat of 1976. And some of us use platforms like these, we use platforms like these to heal. Mainly because when we came out of prison, when we came out of torture, we never got a space and support to be treated out of the head. We stayed with this head, and some of this head also affect our families today. And I speak to my children, I speak sometimes when I address people and say, when I do cry, please, just hold me, that I shouldn't cry and be loud. And because we are still hurting. And I'm not only saying this from only my side, but many of my sisters sitting here. There are moments I'm still scared to sit in a dark room. I'm still scared to hear a scream. Even the other day I was in a plane coming back from Robben Island, and there was this baby was screaming. It was really, really getting into the screams in prison, the screams in detention. Let's just note this, that South Africa at that time had a law that was called Section 6 of the Terrorism Act of 1966. And that act allowed the police to detain someone without trial and keep that person not less than 18 months in solitary confinement. So, Section 6 of 1966 was quite, actually, most of us seated there have gone through that. And in that period of being in the cell alone, you must also understand that it is a period in which they're starting to torture you. I tell people that Sibongile I was talking about, who was the only lady in our trial, I know her nude, I know her body. She knows my body. We were one time during interrogation, put together, and this policeman, a white policeman for that matter, was using a pliers, do you know pliers? To pull Sibongile's nipples. I was made with other males that were there to actually even squat, and our private parts being tightened on a twine and with some, wire and 3 bricks, and expected to lift up those on my grandson asked me most of the time, why do I have some marks under my feet? They would put sometimes needles facing up and say, jump on them. Actually, that experience at that time was not as the experience that other people had, having to be thrown out of the window from the 10th floor of John Foster Square. You would regard what they did to us, whilst we consider it as having been painful, you would actually regard it as being less painful than those who died. I'm just bringing in that perspective, colleagues, to say to you, as we journey together and as we are listening to some of those experiences in different spaces, have a perspective. And the perspective also that I would like to bring in, and which I was requested by Prof to bring in, is also a perspective of we are the class of 1976. And as a class of 76, I know that tomorrow I will be talking about the victories, the virtues, and the values of that class. But today I want to bring in the actual story of 1976. Where did it start? What was planning? What was happening? And all that. And then we'll zoom into the day itself, where my girlfriends here will take over. I've got 3 of the best. And they will take over from there. Now, I was 15. I just turned, my birthday was on the 15th of June. So I had just turned 16 the day before June 16. Isn't that interesting? And the Department of Education then, we had in this country, someone was saying, maybe around 18 departments of education. And all of them being put according to race. And after race, according to different African languages. I was in a school just on Vilakazi Street. And it was known as Orlando West Junior Secondary School. And let me assure you, that school was under Bantu education. Now, Bantu education was a system of education that was clearly there to make sure that any black person should not know any other thing, academic or even technical and all that. The only design, actually, Verwoerd, who was the architect of that system of education, was very good in saying, you cannot give a black child any form of education that has maths, science, because he's not going to be able to use it. The only thing that you can give to the child, a black child, is a subject that will actually make him or her to be the best of domestic worker. That was the design of that. Actually, he went further. Make the black child to see the greener pastures, but not reach them. Some of our experiences today in our current government, we usually say, some of the things that are happening are making us to say, Verwoerd was really naughty. He made out of it many of us to see these greener pastures, but not reach them. Park that. That system of education in 1958, Prof will know better, the Department of the Bantu Education Act introduced, and many of, was one of the 18, and it was meant for blacks, and then it was also then within that education, you'll have Zulu schools, Venda schools, Nda, and then you'll have Xhosa schools, Sotho schools, and all that. Now, what was interesting was that to reinforce this division and this madam or boss servant principle of the education system, they then said, came up with this, that now, no man, these guys, these black children, better part of the money that funds their education comes from us as whites and as Afrikaners. So let us make sure now that now they study in our language. Then they introduced Afrikaans as a medium of instruction. It was for them to enhance this, that now there must be the boss, servant, domestic worker, so that when we talk to the missus and the boss, we must talk, and they must, when we speak to them, they must understand us we must understand them. And ladies and gentlemen, it was only in 1978, 75, when they were now really meaning to impose this and to implement the policy of Afrikaans as a medium of instruction. When they did so, in 76, the school where I was amongst the first schools to start boycotting Afrikaans as a medium of instruction. And they were really forceful because they even brought books to the schools that were in Afrikaans. And can I tell you, we burnt them down. Didn't burn the school. Underline that. Underline and keep that. We didn't burn the library. Please keep that. We only burnt all those books that were in Afrikaans. I can still do it. Then after that, a school just across called Beulah Primary, it is now honored to be called, we're with Antoinette here when, I don't know whether you're aware, Prof, that the school across the road is now called Vuyisa Makubu Primary. Vuyisa Makubu is the one that is holding Hector Peterson in the picture. We called the school across on his name. And I'm told that Vuyisa was a boyfriend. No. Be careful, eh? There's some of those hidden matters, Prof, but I will treat them later. And then, so just to keep the connection, and Mbuisa, and listen to her. He said, "I must shut up." She said she was going to give me corporal punishment because then on. Oh, hey, I don't see you. How are you? Good. That's one of the daughters of one of those heroes of 1976. And she's doing great work. Let's give her a hand. And after, she's a Seatlholo. She's a daughter to Khotso Seatlholo. That's the daughter to Khotso Seatlholo, yes. Okay. So what happened is that then, where was I? Okay. Then Vuyisa Makubu School, just across the road, as I indicated, we have placed a small garden also there, just to connect with Mbuyisa, who is not known as to his whereabouts. And there's a story that wherever he is still alive. And there's a belief in many of us that he might be no more. The son is very angry and bitter because people talk about Mbuyisa, but they're doing nothing to find the father. So you can imagine that's another pain sitting somewhere. Okay. So once we were in boycott, and I will send maybe to the team some part, we've got a summary of what we call the chronology of events of 1976. We'll be prepared to share that. And then there is also the part that speaks to after the boycott in these schools, one of the schools that was the loudest of the schools against Afrikaans as a medium of instruction being introduced was a school called Naledi High. I was sharing just yesterday in one of your departments, Department of Sociology, I was sharing with one of the leaders of that school called, the leaders in the school in those years called Ngujana, Enos Ngujana. We were sharing a platform just yesterday. Now, on the day, Ngujane wrote a letter to the then Minister of Bantu Education, who was MC Botha. MC Botha. That was a meter. He was not only Minister of Bantu Education, he was also Minister of Bantu Affairs. Now the Bantu Affairs is us, you know. So he was dealing with our affairs, you know, these black guys. So he wrote a letter. Instead of getting a reply from the minister saying that now that we are not going to we're not going to take Afrikaans. Then they visited him at the school where he was, Naledi High. And then when they got into Naledi High, whilst the police were busy in the office with the principal so that the principal can get Mbuyisa, the students burnt the police van outside. And it was on fire. So they were careless, the police, by the time they left there. They had to call for more of, support. Then, I'm just now coming to summarize. Then what happened is that, let me touch this. And I know that this I was going to touch more tomorrow. More of what where we were getting more of our vision, mission, and our mental state as young people that time. It was from Black consciousness. Steve Biko's Black consciousness. That, if you were to ask me standing here, I'm born out of that. BC. I did not know anything. I was speaking to young people just the other day. I was saying the problem with our young people today, when they speak on issues youth and youth development, they speak about them under a T-shirt of a political party. Then they lose the point. Am I making sense? Now, those days, we were more Black consciousness. And Black consciousness was born in 1968. And 1968, when Steve Biko, Dr. Mampila, and the rest were, it was, by the way, a university and tertiary level institution structure of Black consciousness called SASO. That was SASO, South African Student Organization, was part of the Black consciousness movement that was at university level. At high school level, then there was SASM. SASM, in the O of the SASO, put M. It was now South African Student Movement. Are we clear? And that, again, body of Black consciousness did not only end up there. It also had Black community programs. And Black community programs, that's what supported us. They built clinics for Black people. Steve Biko and Dr. Rampila in King Williamstown, in a place called Ginsberg. They built a clinic there. There were Dr. Motlane and other doctors started what was called then Zanempilo Clinic, mobile clinic, which in June 16 was working a lot because when you get to be shot, you cannot go to any clinic, but you'll go to Zanempilo because when you get to that clinic, you'll get arrested. So they started that. And later on, a clinic like Zanempilo brought into being the private hospital next to Para, Lisedi Clinic. And there were also cultural bodies that were also associated, very busy with protest culture. Midupi, your bodies, your poems such as Africa My Beginning, Africa My End, came up there. The Gibson Kenters who started, you might see outside there, they are also honoring him. The Gibson Kenters in the arts and culture field came up with protest plays and all that. So the vibe was very Black consciousness. And again, Black consciousness came out of protest. In the 1960, a lot of them were either arrested, if not arrested, were underground, if not under. That time it was, we usually refer to that, those days between 60 and 68, we usually refer to that as a period of lull, particularly in the Black leadership. Because the Black leadership was either in exile, if not in exile, in prison, if not in prison, underground. And then there was a whole lot of white liberals that occupied that space. That's the time in which parties such as PFP, the Progressive Federal Party, took space, Helen Suzman. And in Parliament, Helen Suzman used to speak on our behalf as black people. And that is why in universities, you had NUSAS, National Union of South African Students, which was also white-led. So there was a whole lot of the white, by the time when we did not have African and black leaders, and then we had a lot of white liberals occupying that space. Are we there? Are you still with me? I'm bringing you towards these two ladies. I'm going to be bringing you to focus on them at some stage. But that history is very important, ladies, and that understanding. And it was that time also when the church, I must say this, played a very big role. I said this to students yesterday. I said the church played a big role that time. The Bishop Tutus, the Bishop Tutu, Father Smangaliso Mkhatshwa, the list goes on, Frank Chikane, and many others. That time, there were also those that even later supported us as student leaders at the time. And again, in South Africa, there were a lot of, in the townships, a lot of clubs. You know, we used to call them youth clubs. We were in the same youth club with the current president of this country was in one of those. You're supposed to be a born-again Christian. I'm not too sure anymore. and you know, there was a Youth Alive in Dube. There was Zoe. There was Teenage Outreach out in Naledi. And those played a role even in building us as leaders. The question then comes up that now, when a 15-year-old was a leader in 1976, he might have been coming from somewhere. Am I making sense? So I came from that environment. Then SAZIM called a meeting in Wagerspreid and then in Roodepoort, west part of Johannesburg, where they then said, how are we supporting these students that were in boycott? And then they took a resolution that they are going to call a meeting and call all the school. That meeting was called on the, don't talk June 16 if you don't talk, the 13th of June. The 13th, Inos Nguchane is the 8th of June. That is when there was an attack. Then from there you talk the 30th. Then SAZIM called us on the 13th of June with all the other schools. That is where a resolution was taken that we are going to be marching on June 16. I know that question comes up most of the time that says, why 3 days in between? There are two reasons. One good one, second one, naughty one. The good one was that you will never stay with information long. You will definitely get arrested or your plan will be disrupted by the security police. Hence the 3 days. Actually, the head of the police, when giving evidence in our trial, said, these guys caught us with our pants down. We did not know what was going to happen that day. His father will tell that story better if we're still alive. He was going to tell that story better of the day. And he was amongst the few that knew about the day. And unfortunately, he passed on the day. That's the pain of the struggle. Okay, the 13th came. And then after the 13th, we agreed. Can I get water? Sorry. And then an action committee was then, forgot to tell you the naughty one, and then it will let my voice not crack. The naughty one, it is that now, on the 16th of June, we're starting with our exams, and we did not want to write exams. That's the naughty side of that. And however, the planning was perfect. We knew what to do and when. But one thing that we never planned for was that they were going to come on us in such a heavy armament and even want to kill us. That much we did not plan for. We're children. We never thought, we thought even if they were to really do something to us, it was going to be just a baton or something. Not that. Unfortunately, I remember that evening when Mama Winnie Mandela, Mama Sophie Tima, when we went to Baragwanath in the mortuary on that day, we counted not less than 110 corpses of children. And some of those corpses today are not yet even accounted for. Unfortunately, there are two of those that, of the bodies of that day, June 16. It will be another day when we give the details of what happened on that day. Unfortunately, on that day, Prof, two of our fellow South Africans, people who gave their lives on that day, are Dr. Eggleston, that's the father, Hector Peterson, that's the sister. And I am going to request them to tell the pain of the day and to tell how far did that go. And I've given you the background and of how did we come to June 16. But now I told you that there was an action committee that was led by Tsietsi Mashinini as the chair, and this piece of flesh standing before you as the deputy to Tsietsi, Sibongile Mthembu as the secretary, Mefi Morube as the treasurer, Zweli Cezane as the organizer. And that was the first body of student that led then the day, June 16, and two representatives from each school. And they led, I always say this when I'm asked by newspapers and media, I sometimes regret why I led children or young people to death. One of those young people I led to death was Hector Peterson. And the sister is here. Sorry.
Before she comes in, let me say that when she was carrying Hector Peterson in her arms, it was 21 years later after Dr. Verwoerd said, if you teach black people science, they will think they are white. So don't teach them science. I'm saying this to say, to contextualize it within the concept of reconciliation. Because when we went into Parliament and remembered this, we sat down and said, knowing and remembering that, what must we do? That is what gave birth to us talking about indigenous knowledge systems. Because indigenous knowledge systems has science in it, and we said, nobody lives one day, 1 minute, without handling science. Science sitting here. Science switching on light. And you are told, if you are taught to switch on light, you'll become white. So you are not going to be taught that. I just wanted to put that into the context. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to say much because my brother here, Seth Mazibuko, okay. Seth Mazibuko is going to talk about the rest of the things, but I'm just going to focus on the day of the 16th of June. Well, we were told in 1975 that things are going to change in the new year. But you know how students are like. We'll see when the time comes. Yes, the new year came, and we are very excited. We just summed everything up. Whatever news you are going to be told at schools, obviously, is something exciting. It's New Year. Yes, we went to our different schools, and we were thoroughly explained that the syllabus has changed. That means already that you are going to be taught in the medium of Afrikaans, subjects like mathematics, biology, physical science. You know, there and then there was disruption. Why should we learn in our oppressor's language? Where in this planet are we really going to speak Afrikaans besides here in South Africa and Namibia? Well, some thought maybe in Germany or Sweden, but at the end of it all, we really had to come up with plans. Well, some thought we can just write a memorandum and hand it over to the Department of Education. But some said, hey, wait, by the way, we need to keep this as a secret. If not, we should be discreet. So what now? Well, the last option was to approach high school students, of which there were those subtle political organizations like Black Consciousness, South African Student Movement, South African Students Organizations. Even though we went days later, because we're doubtful and pulling one another. And we're told that, well, we know about the situation. We are still trying to find an amicably way to resolve the matter. With us, we wanted things to happen speedily before we could reach the month of June. Well, we had to wait. While waiting, some students started to moan and groan like, this is really taking long. It's best if you go back to the drawing board. We've got better plans now. Well, it was too late. All we had to do was to be patient and wait for the results. On the 13th of June, that was the final straw. With the spread of mouth, we're told that on the 16th of June, we'll be demonstrating around Soweto. We were very excited, but it was also emphasized that we must make sure we don't tell our parents. Oh, that was scary. But anyway, we just said we'll go with the flow. So yes, the day of the 16th of June came. Already we had our placards with messages on, away with Africans, to hell with Africans. Actually, there wasn't much that we can write. So most of the placards were repeating themselves. On the very same day, as I was walking to my school, I saw students from other schools in groups. So you wouldn't tell whether they were excited or afraid, even when I got to my school. It was time for assemblies of which we would hold every day. We wouldn't start a class without going to the assembly. It was normal. As usual, we sang, and while we were praying, there was this disturbing sound like a big aeroplane just on top of our heads. Obviously, it was disturbing. And I realized that even when your eyes are closed, you can still investigate. Can you? Can you? Yes, by listening, hearing, and sound. So at the assemblies, there was this sequence where they would say, short ones in the front and tall ones at the back. And usually teachers concentrate at the back rather than in the front. So I was always in the front, and I loved it to bits. You know, in a way, I felt special. So I just told myself, well, why not take advantage of being short and investigate? So I just went like, and actually, the sound came from one of the nominated school students from Morris Isaacson High School. They were singing and chanting, proceeding through our school gate. You know, we just pretended as if we don't really know what's going on, because my principal was very cheeky, and we were so afraid of him, even neighboring schools. So he just left us there at the assemblies and approached those students. I heard him say, "My children are not going anywhere." But one student said, "Father, you had your chance. This is our chance." Hearing that, it was like, oh, what a relief. So we just took our school bags and put them nice on the veranda. Some just threw them there. And those who had placards, they just pulled out the placards, and we followed the procession. Yes, we went from location to location collecting students, but you'd find that in some locations, there would be about 3 to 4 schools in a row. That means a lower primary, a high school, or a secondary. So I think younger ones could hear the sound, and they just came out to see what's going on. And they spotted those different uniforms, and they knew that the elderly brothers and sisters attending in those schools. So I think they told themselves like, they are enjoying themselves, and they never invited us. We are going to invite ourselves. But in actual fact, younger ones were not supposed to be part and parcel of the demonstration. Well, it was a peaceful march, so we just let them join in. As we went through the street of Soweto with pride, at some point, our leaders summoned us and told us that police are around. We must make sure we don't provoke the police. But now, speaking to a crowd is something different. You know, it goes in here and comes out the other way. Even so, we managed to be calm. So when we reached the school office just up the road, and the school is called Orlando West High. Upon arrival, already police were there with dogs and batons. So we just ignored the police. We kept on singing. And later, our leaders told us that other schools are on the way. We can just hang around waiting for those schools. We were so excited. Imagine we came from different parts of Soweto, and we have never encountered any problems. You know, already felt like, oh, this is cool. It looks like things are going our way. While waiting with excitement, all of a sudden, there was a shot. And the turnout was plus minus 20,000, believe it or not. So we ran amok in confusion, running for cover, dashing into other people's homes, and it was so scary and confusing. Remember, we never told our parents, and when that was happening, well, it was something else. I'll just call that scene hide and seek. As soon as you hear the shot, we'll go into hiding, and when it's calm, would emerge back to the pavement. During that hide and seek, I spotted my younger brother on the opposite side of the pavement. I became restless. I knew he was not supposed to be there. He was too young to understand what was really going on. But still, I could not just ignore his presence. So I decided that I will call him, but I will use his cultural name, which was Zolile. Zolile means calmness. So I called out his name. He quickly looked around. You could see that he heard that somebody called out his name. And when he looked from where I was, I just waved and he came closer, smiling. I just said to him, it seems as if things are getting out of hand. I'll make sure we get home, we'll be okay. Well, I was just saying that, trying to be brave and bold. I was very scared. So while I continued talking to him, there was another shot, so we had to go back into hiding. Unfortunately, we went two separate ways. When it's calm, as I emerged back to the pavement, he was nowhere to be seen. Yes, I looked around, my eyes roving, thinking I might spot him again. But not very far from where I was, like something happened there, and students were busy gathering the scene. So I sort of had two minds, whether I should go and investigate or stay. Eventually, I chose to stay, because I thought he might come around looking for me and we are going to miss one another. But I was very anxious to know what was happening there. I had to stay. Yes, my eyes were roving and at the same time trying to think that if he comes around, we can take any street. If not, we should wait for other students to be in a group of 5 or 6. Then we can hit the road. I don't know. Maybe because my mind was wandering and I was also confused, I just saw a man coming from nowhere, running towards me. As that man passed me, my eyes followed him, and actually he was focusing at that crowd where students were gathered. When he got there, you could see that he was making way, pushing these other students. And it also seemed like he was struggling or trying to get something from these other student hands. As he lifted, yes, I could see it's a body frame. As he lifted for the second time, the first thing that I spotted, it was my brother's shoes. So I tried running to the scene. Already they were on their way, running towards me. I joined them, and as we continued running, I was asking this man, "Who are you? This is my brother, I've been looking for him. Where are you taking him?" The man just kept on running. Then I looked at my brother. I saw blood coming from the side of the mouth. I panicked. "Who are you? Can't you see my brother's hurt? Where are you taking him?" He never said anything. A car just stopped in front of us, and one lady jumped out of the car, introduces herself as a journalist, and said she can help us. As that man was about to put my brother in the car, he said, "Oh, he's dead." Hearing that, I was sort of like torn into two. I could see myself on the other end crying in desperation. To me, it was like this is not real, it can't be happening. The next moment I was at the clinic, and the clinic looked very strange, like it has been long deserted. But I knew there were people there. So I had to bang, knock, windows crying out for help, and one white doctor came out. He took my brother out of the car inside the clinic, and he said to me there was nothing more that he could do. I understood him very well. Yes, I stood there, trying to find myself. Then I decided, let me just go next to the window inside the clinic. And as I looked through the window, outside there, it was another chapter. In fact, students were retaliating. Like everywhere else in the morning, we have delivery vans for bread, milk. Even some of our white colleagues used to work here in Soweto as teachers, administrators, you name them. And they were caught in the act. In amusement, while I was watching the stoning of the delivery vans, already some students have looted those vans, that loaves of bread in their hands. From the other side of the window, a van came rolling down like it was stoned 3 blocks away from here, and on the side of the door, there was an abbreviation of Western Board Administration. That means that car belonged to the government. And at that moment, anything that belongs to the government was destroyed in any form. Yes, that car lost control and swerved to where most of the students were. When that man was pulled out of the car, he was a white man. Each and everything that could kill a human being was used on him. You name them: knives, spades, stones, anything. I just froze. Then I thought, now my mind is really playing with me. It was unbelievable. Days later, we heard that the very same man who was killed, it was Dr. Van Halstein, who was assigned here in Soweto as a social worker, and so many people knew him. That was sad. But all those who died did not die in vain. As people, we managed. What? Oh, okay. So as people, we managed to take out good from bad, to live by today, to shape ourselves and our country. Thank you.
When I say it's still hurting, I really mean it. It doesn't get understood by many as to how our experiences are hurting. Some of us feel we want to turn the clock backwards and say, let's look at another way that we'd have maybe used to bring down apartheid. Dr. Eggleston was one of those who did not deserve death. He didn't. He didn't at all. But the anger and maybe even the less of what in the middle of being attacked by old people who happen to be white who have oppressed us for so many years. We never saw the real Eggleston. We only saw a white face. And we are working hard, Prof, as part of our reconciliation program. And we are refusing to make this reconciliation as something similar to the peace and reconciliation that happened. We believe strongly that peace and reconciliation should not just be an act, it should be a program. And I hope, Prof, you will lead that process. It's something that is also spiritual. It's something that also goes deep and doesn't end just with us, but also it goes to our families. I remember I told you that 11 students were arrested and put on trial. And she came to give evidence. The police thought she was going to give evidence against us. Is that your mom? Sorry. And the mother said they did not know. And it was a painful moment when her mother came to court. And it is a moment also that we will treasure. That when the husband has been killed so terribly, that woman will stand up and say, I don't think that these children even deserve to be in this courtroom. My sister, come. The story of Dr. Eggleston. And ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, after that, I want to we'll connect the story of the day with the leadership that came when some of us went to jail. Her father took over the deputyship of the student representative body, and that will be also another story. And she's going to tell her story, Joyce there. Story maybe during the SSRC, where her father was also deputy and also led as the president of the SSRC. But at the moment, let's listen to what sometimes we say. You'll understand when we say sometimes we regret why we let children out of the classroom only to be killed, and that killing goes to also parents. Dr. Eggleston used to look after us, use even some of the government, whatever, to try and support us. He did not deserve that.
Thank you, everyone. Usually I'm known now as quite a brave person, but in terms of 40-odd years later, but I stand here today, first of all, humbled to be standing here in front of such incredible humans who I feel are, having listened yesterday, giving up part of their lives to also bring some kind of healing in some way to people. And I learned that from my father. And more than that, I'm actually grateful.
Can you maybe just hold it somewhere?
Yes, is that better?
So that it's audible.
Okay, can you hear me?
Hear when she talks?
Can you hear me now?
Again?
Doesn't? Okay.
Is it okay?
Can everyone hear? Sorry. And more than that, the privilege, and I always said this, that I had the 12 years with my father and brought up in a home that didn't know apartheid. We knew it. We never lived it. We learned so much from my father about his passion, through his passion, I should rather say, of bringing all humans together. He was a sociologist. He had just completed his doctorate, and it was based on what do young Africans think. So he went to Soweto every day of his life in apartheid years. So our family was seen as a bit different, not just different. Sometimes we were shunned by some communities. He was also, I have to say, a very religious man, Jewish, and he prayed twice a day, every day. And every Sabbath, at 5 o'clock, his phone would be switched off. And for 24 hours, we had full attention of my father. And we used to walk to the synagogue every day, and I used to listen to his stories. And I do remember about 2 weeks before the riots, he said, "Janet, if anything ever happened to me, you are the oldest. You'll have to look after your mother and your sister." 2 weeks later, he drove us to school, as he did every day, and then drove into Soweto, which is where he worked. And his drive was to make peace. He wasn't a political man at all. He wanted to make sure that every child got to school and was educated. So he, on the one hand, was actually a mediator between the West Rand Administration Board, Bantu Education, and the children at school. But his inner drive, his biggest drive, was to ensure that they were educated and that they got to school. And he was working with Murphy Morobi and all the students, 11, on his thesis. He was getting information from them. And I know, and my mother told me this, he begged John Foster, who was the Prime Minister. He begged him not to force Afrikaans and just give it time. So he, on one hand, he was right in the middle trying to bring peace. And unfortunately, on that day, what we learned is he'd actually got out of Soweto and he went back to save his secretary. He was worried she would get into, that's why he was in that car. I was 12. It was 1 week before my bat mitzvah, which is a time in a Jewish girl's life. It's like a time where we become of age, and it's a very special time. My father was obviously looking very forward to that day. And that very next week, I went with 60 of my friends, and I went through the bat mitzvah. And I had also been told, you're the oldest. My mother had to go out to work, and I must tell you that when you talk about healing, the biggest healing only came to me much later. I was very young, and I resented my mother for so many years because she had to go out and work. We didn't really have money, so we had help from the community and family. So she went out to work because my mother sacrificed many, many years. She started a business when we were young, when my father wanted to take this on, so that she could support us, and she supported him. And I never got that until I was much older. The sacrifice she made not to take on motherhood and go into schools every day and sell educational toys, that was her business. So I took on that role, my older sister and myself, navigating the unknown. That's what we did. We moved from one flat to another every year. We had the most incredible woman, Sina Mapitsa, who brought us up. To this day, my children call her Mama. So she brought me and my sister up, shouted at us, sent us to school. There were times when, she tells a story, there was one time later on in our lives, there wasn't much food. She would go to the neighbors and get peanut butter sandwiches. And she disciplined us. She didn't like friends. She told us, she shouted at us. She's still in my life today. When I got married, she came to work for me and my husband. She left my mother. And the longest story short, I don't want to talk for too long, but it's interesting. You know, I say that life steps into us more than we step into life. And that day, my purpose for sure stepped into me. Because later on, I couldn't go to university. I went straight out to work. But when I got married, I decided I wanted to study. And for some reason, I signed up. I think it was at UNISA. Didn't do it. I went to the Academy of Metaphysics, maybe because I came from a very spiritual background, and I ended up years later in Germany with where I really started to do deep work, and that was my healing work, which was called Family and Systemic Constellations work. And that was with these amazing professors, doctors who established this work after the Holocaust. And it's all about reconciliation. And it's a very deep somatic process. And that was my healing. And I met amazing people who said, wow, would you like to do this work in South Africa? The schools said yes. They said, here it is. So there again, life steps in. And a few years later, where am I sitting? In Soweto, down the road from the Morris Isaacson School where my father worked, not realizing it, and doing this reconciliation work with a group of teachers. And my partner, Rasada Goldblatt, is sitting next to me, and he looks at me and he keeps saying, do you know where we are? And I'm ignoring him because, you know, I'm so focused on the work. And 2 days later, and I'll be working with Zulus, Sotho, all different tribes, and bringing peace and reconciliation to them. And in the circle, when we're checking out, Rasada starts to cry. And I always used to say, he cries for me. He starts to cry, and he says, do you know who this is? And he tells them. And everyone in the room is like, oh my gosh. And they start to cry. And one of the men stood up and said, and this was my healing. By the way, sorry, what I didn't say is I did go to the TRC. My mother wouldn't go anywhere. So I really did have to take it all. And I was about 32 years old when I went to the TRC. And just the only thing I asked for was some recognition of my dad, voices, that our voice is heard, that he is seen for what he did. And years and years later, there I am standing in Soweto, and this beautiful man stands up and he says, wow, who am I to think I was the only one who suffered in the face of apartheid? And he thanking me, that was my healing. That's when I feel I got more healing than anything else, and in Germany. And today that's what I do. I do a lot of reconciliation work all over the world. I work with leadership. My purpose is to bring transformation around reconciliation. And I just want to thank Antoinette, again, stepped into my life. We've given 1 or 2 talks together. So thank you, Antoinette, I know that you were the person who mentioned me and asked them to invite me here today. So I feel like the invitation has given me that opportunity to be heard. And I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful that you've all invited me and that I got to meet Joyce, because actually what I've searched for most of my life is to meet the people that knew him. And last night when I looked at Joyce, I said, did you know Dr. Edelstein? And she said, of course. And she just threw her arms around me, and she's already spoken. That's so much I want to I said I would love to give her some healing, constellations work. So that is the longest story very short, as short as I could tell. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And thank you, Seth. And I've met Seth many times on all the programs that we've had to...
Thank you. I thought I was not counted in because I'm a male. And, and now lately, you know, you ladies are just only looking after yourselves and not look after us as males. And colleagues, after June 16, as I indicated, some of us were taken into prison. I was sentenced to 7 years on Robben Island. When I got there, I hardly had size uniform fitting me. And, but excited that I was also in the presence of big leaders such as Nelson Mandela, Seth Cooper, Ahmad Kathrada, and many others. There's a section on Robben Island that in your heritage space, Prof, I insisted, I was in Robben Island, I returned home just over the last week. I was supposed to be with her, then she ran away from me. And then on Robben Island, there's a section that used to be called Klip Hoyers, stone throwers. That was a section that was mainly for the students that came after 1976. In Port Elizabeth, there was a biggest trial called PE. Ours was Soweto 11. In Port Elizabeth, there's one called PE 33. There were 33 of them. Just around that time before that, there was also the BPC Sasso trial. But some of the comrades then that remained, then the Action Committee was then redesigned to become the Soweto Student Representative Council. And of course, the first leader was still Tsietsi, and then after that, Khotso Seatlholo. Let me not cease to mention this, that we have put together a tombstone that young people have put the tombstone, have put Khotso next to Tsietsi. So they sleep next to each other at Avalon Cemetery. Every June 16, we take that walk that goes to the cemetery and to connect with them. And there's also, we also visit Hector Peterson's grave. But then after that, the one other date connected to June 16 is the 4th of August. I hope you have kept these. That time it was more confrontation between hostel dwellers and communities. And it was becoming very dangerous. And many of our leaders of that time, those who took position of leadership in the SSRC and in other bodies, were heavily attacked. And now at that time, not only by the police, but also by hostel dwellers. And so really it intensified, and that time we were in prison, some of us. And again, the ANC and the PAC, which were two main liberation movements of that time in exile, that also had military wing. They both have said they could not even deal with the numbers of young people who were joining Umkhonto, who were joining the other APLA. Young people were flying out of the country and to be joining the liberation movement in exile. And there were these two that they mainly joined. And at that time, there was at some time also where even young people formed their own, called South African Revolutionary Youth Council. But what was important, it was when some of the leaders went through heavy torture, heavy pain in exile. And one of those we've had that had a serious one was Joyce. Joyce Dipale, as again Prof said it, was a very exciting, very heavily spirited elite, represented strongly women, very loud, and she carried herself with such dignity, and there was time when then Joyce, we're going to have a problem because Joyce has a problem now with her speech. Will try to assist her, and she's, because of the difficulties she have, and then she cannot maybe be long in this, and
check first, read first.
Joyce Boitumelo Dipale, I have a stroke, and as a result, I have, what is that word?
Aphasia.
Aphasia, communication impairment. For more information about aphasia, contact the University of the Witwatersrand Speech and Hearing Clinic on the number 011 440 0503, and then underline the following that apply. Speaking takes a little more time. Speaking is very difficult. Writing keywords helps. Comprehending speech is difficult. Use simple drawings. Numbers are very difficult for me.
You understand? Morning. No speech at all. So remember Oliver Tambo Airport, same thing, aphasia. John Kandra, lots and lots aphasia gone completely. So hard actually. So Timor, Bigo and everything lost completely. So my sister Lizzie and talk slowly.
Hello, everyone. This is the story of Joyce Dipale.
Small.
Okay. This is the story of Joyce Dipale with my voice. My name is Elizabeth. I'm going to speak on behalf of Joyce. My journey as an activist. My name is Joyce Boitumelo Dipale. I'm a freedom fighter and an activist. So, I would like to convey her gratitude at not only being invited, but also being honored for her role in the struggle. It is an even bigger honor to be acknowledged whilst I'm still alive. Looking back at this chapter in my journey, the most vivid memory I have was when I was arrested at John Foster Square prison. I endured the most horrific torture of mankind. I went through 3 different prison cells from John Foster Square. I was transferred to Bloemfontein prison. Soon after that, with no explanation, I was taken to number 4, now known as Constitutional Hill. I later immigrated to family in Gaborone, Botswana, but as it turns out, the Askaris have eyes and ears everywhere. It was not long before they knew my whereabouts. They came into my home in the middle of the night and took straight shots at me and the people, anyone in their way. According to them, I was surely dead. But I survived 4 gunshots wounds. I say this laughing today because that's how memory fails me at times, because I'm not sure if it was 3 or 4 gunshot wounds. I'm quite sure it was 4. With the help of the Swedish embassy in Botswana, she managed to get assistance to cross over to Zambia, Kenya, and Canada. She worked with Kenyan Council of Churches as secretary and Canadian Council of Churches. Whilst in Zambia, she worked alongside O.R. Tambo. She went everywhere with him together with Thabo Mbeki, campaigning for the ANC support from abroad. Following that, I lost my younger brother, Ernest Mwabi, referred to as detainee number 47, who was killed in detention before he could even go on trial, just 5 months after the death of Dr. Neil Ajat in 1982. In my lifetime, I have seen our country obtain freedom, and my wish now is to see a free South Africa where our youth are in schools, in jobs, and not on the streets smoking nyaupe. I wish to see a South Africa that has electricity, access to food, and running water for all. I want to see our women as CEOs and in government, which is why I encourage our youth, and in particular our young women, to take on the baton and continue to run this race for the sake of our people and our country. Ka Setswana ba re, mmangwana o tshwara thipa ka fa bogaleng, and that saying is no accident. Ngwana ke sejo wa tlhakanelwa, which simply means it takes a village to raise a child. Let us unite and build a better South Africa for our children and those to come. Ke leboga go mina gane. As a result of the torture from prison and the attempted attack on my life, I suffered a stroke and lost the ability to speak, read, and write. My memory was also affected badly, as I could not remember some of the most basic things and memorable life events. Today, I'm living with aphasia. I always ask people to read up on it and educate themselves. In closing, I would like to thank God for my life that was spared, even for the physical and psychological pain I went through, because in a strange way, it helped build me to be the conqueror I am today. I am fast regaining my ability to speak more clearer, and my memory is serving me better by the day. I would like to thank everyone that has contributed to the journey of rebuilding my life. Regards, J.B. Dipali.
Thank you very much. I'm going to say this, and this I say in so many words and so many platforms. that sometimes when I see young people do what they do on June 16, wearing school uniform, drinking and dancing, they don't know this pain. They just don't know this pain. And it is a pain that unfortunately many, I said earlier on, that the pain is not only on us, but also in our families. We are bringing up children that have got to live with this pain. And you can imagine how it gets extended. And thank you for at least allowing us to pour out and allowing us to tell our story brief. And the story that unfortunately it's hidden somewhere. And someone is there to say, let it not come out in its raw state. I challenge you, academics. I challenge you, people of knowledge, that it is very difficult for us as people who lived this to tell the story. And healing process is not that easy. I go sometimes to, a lot for that matter, to Freedom Park. And thank you for creating that space, because one is able to sometimes go out there and pour out. In those words, thank you very much. God bless.
Just very briefly, Joyce and I were under command as soldiers, freedom fighters, trained. We were trained not to kill anybody who is white. We would never kill somebody because that person is white. It's a very important statement, that. That does not mean that we did not kill. In her statement, she says, I am a freedom fighter. This is the Joyce that I know. She had a very mischievous smile, which we always noted. But also she was very strong then. She was our comrade in arms. For a very long time, I did not know where Joyce is. I knew Joyce with her husband, who is now late. I'm trying to give a humane picture here, so that we must never forget that all of those people who laid down their lives so that there must be a South Africa which is non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, aiming to be prosperous, consisted of people like Joyce. That whole struggle consisted of young men. Some came when they were 16, some 12, some 20. Their graves are scattered all over the country here. This morning before I came here, I got a report from the people who work in the missing persons committee who were reporting about somebody who disappeared for a very long time. And today we eventually found where his grave is. They were reporting that to me. There are about 683 guerrillas where we don't know where they are buried. We are still looking, whereabout, tracing. We will find them.
Yeah.
We will find them. And we will bury them.
Yes, yes. Why not? You know.
We shall bury them. Thanks, Joyce. Before we go, I want to say that there is an island in the world. We must ask ourselves, why is this island forever being so torn apart by the French, by the British, by the Americans? Why? Even now, as we are speaking, people are dying now, as we are speaking. She comes from there. I was saying yesterday, this morning, that I spoke about Palestine. What is the problem? Why is there no peace in this world? Who is behind this peaceless world? For what? So that today Joyce has to express herself through somebody reading a newspaper. Joyce was a vibrant woman, alive, and that's why she was a guerrilla. So I'm saying this to say, today when we meet like this, please, let us just stop a minute and remember there are many Joyces in the world. In Haiti, in Gaza now, all over the continent, in different parts of the world. The question is, why is there no peace? What must we do to bring this peace? Let's take a break, and I'll consult with Veli and we'll decide how to move from here. Thank you very much.
Most of the time when I get into interacting on the issues June 16, I always have men, being the people around me. And it's so much that some people think June 16 was a boys' club thing. and it's amazing that today there are more of ladies, and we usually do not talk as ladies and gentlemen, but we talk as comrades. And then that tells you the story of 1976, that it didn't just belong to Boruna, so it also belonged to Bomme and women. But as part of what my narration gave you and timelines and all that, one of the, I mentioned this, that during the course of our planning, during the course of our interaction and even implementation, they were those that actually took part actively. And there were those, again, after that, and then people suffered. That was the pain that was all of us shared this morning. And part of that pain is Mama here, and I can tell you, she was the only woman. I said there was a Sibongile that other side, you remember? There was another Sibongile in one of the trials that came up. Well, Remutsaba Kabuyeye, I'm checking if she'll be comfortable, Kabuyeye or Kapolin. So, yeah. So, I'm just going to, she's accompanied by one of the students of those days, Auspumla, and I'm going to try, I introduced her, didn't I, earlier on? She's my daughter, and sometimes I have to give corporal punishment. I told you earlier on, she's a, yeah, the teacher in me doesn't want to get out. and the teacher I was, you know, even after the island, is the teacher that gave corporal punishment. Yeah, she's one of my special girls, I must tell you, because she took up the history of 1976, and being a child, she said she will not allow it to die. And she's a daughter to Khotso Seatlholo, and Khotso Seatlholo was the president after Tsietsi Mashinini, and was a deputy to Tsietsi Mashinini. As I told you, when the father took over, they kicked me to jail, and then he took over. So, and she's a young girl that now runs the Khotso Seatlholo Institute to let live of the legacy of the father and of June 16. I always, is it the grandfather? Khotso? That's the father.
No, I said Kerima.
Okay. No, the father is Khotso.
But the grand.
What are you saying?
Kerry Seatlholo.
No, Khotso Seatlholo. No, Khotso Seatlholo. Yes. I was surprised that how could she be a grandfather? Okay. Now, maybe I'm going to give, because we're getting into another session, and I wouldn't like, you know, to disturb the program. I'm just going to give you just a minute, just to greet and let you be known of who you are and your role, so that then after that, I think better part of the struggle of 1976, we told it in so many ways. Just the role played, and then from there, so that the house must know you very shortly. Oh, I don't know.
Okay. I was one of the Pretoria 12, the 11.
Can we all hear?
Yes. I was one of the Pretoria 12, the 11 men and one woman.
That side, you remember, it was 11 of
You
us.
taking my
and
time.
one. So that side now, it is 11 men and one woman.
You're taking my time. I was working underground, helping students to run away from the country during the...
Can you hear?
You can hear?
A little louder.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Hello? Yes. The last trip I took, we were arrested at the border gate of Amsterdam. The police got hold of us as if they were informed about us. They asked us where we were going. We said we were going to the excursion. We are lost. They say, you lie. We know where you are going. You are going to be trained as terrorists and come back and kill the Boers. I was then taken to Krugersdorp prison, where I was tortured. I was made to stand for 3 days holding a diary and beaten, blindfolded, electrified the whole body. I collapsed. I didn't see myself where I landed. I woke up in a cell amongst the students. I was disorientated. I didn't know who I was anymore. And I was taken to the district surgeon in the prison. They said there's nothing wrong with me. When I said it was as if it was not enough, I was then taken to John Foster Square at the 10th floor, where I was told I will be made to stand on the table and fly like a bird through the window. And many students and many activists died the same way. Fast forward, they brought my mother, they arrested my mother, and they told me that if I don't tell them where the guns were, they're going to kill my mother, and I'll be responsible for that. And you know, I had a 3-year-old baby when I was arrested. They say, what is going to happen to your child? From there, they separated me from my mom. If I didn't die that day, then God is good all the time. I didn't know what happened. The next thing, I was taken now to Pretoria Maximum Prison, where I was left in solitary confinement, and I was then given a case. I was told that I'm going to court. We went to court. At least we found the defense counsels there, Arthur Chuckleson at that time, and Raymond Tucker consulted us. It was a little relief because now we could communicate with lawyers. The case went on and on and on. During the case, the state witnesses declared that they were lying because they were forced to talk about us. In November 1977, Judge Davison was then declared in coma, and he died. The case started all over again, 1978. The case was weakened because most of the state witnesses were released. We were tried with Judge Mayberg and the 2 assessors. And the police were busy murmuring behind us. They said, you killed the judge. Now we brought 3 people who are going to monitor everything. We kept quiet. Okay, the case went on and on and on and on. Then the 6 of us were acquitted. It was myself, her husband, Ntate Ramokhadi, Ntate Jokabi, and others. We were then released. I came back. I was disorientated. I didn't know who I was. I was then my mom took me to Para, where I saw the neurologist. You know, it was a journey, which I can't explain. My son didn't recognize me anymore. He was now 5 years when I come out of jail. And when people say, your mother is here, says, no, Paulina is not, why are they saying Paulina is my mom? Paulina is not my mom. My grandmother is my mom. And that was it. So the relationship between myself and my family and my child, it was a turmoil. Fine, we went to TRC, and the people who did that to us, nothing happened to them. We were just given, sorry, after years, then TRC came, and it was a damage in our life. I never thought I'll be who I am today. And I thank God, and thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Pumla. Mine is short. I think you have already heard about the June 16 history. Can you hear? Okay. Actually, I was a student in 1976 at the secondary school that is Hlengiwe in White City next to Morris Isaacson, when the student all the way from Naledi, they came with a CSC to pick us up down to Orlando West. Then when we are approaching Vilakazi Street, we found the police waiting there, and then we forced, the boys were throwing stones, using the dustbin lids. Then we as girls, because we always afraid, we were crying there, and then the boys, they push us inside the school, others, they take us over the fence so that we can run back home. They said we were disturbing them. That was a very difficult time during 1976. And then the following day at 3 o'clock in the morning, I was collected. And fortunately, when I was supposed to be collected, my mom peeped through the window, and he saw soldiers with the hippos full of students there. And then when he was supposed now to run into the bathroom, into the bedroom, the police, they just kicked the door inside the room. And then they throw me outside. They push me into the hippo. And then we went to John Foster Square for 3 days. We were crying day in and day out without eating. Then they decided to take us out. They just throw us out of the gate. And then we didn't know actually how to get home in Soweto. So it was very, very difficult. It was a difficult time for us because right now we had nothing. And when they were throwing us over the fence, I had some holes in my thigh. Up to today, nothing happens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, colleagues. These are just the stories, and there are many of these stories around there. And I think another program that must also come is to really gather this information from different members and some of the people who do not have the platform like this one, Prof, where we can, tell these stories. And some of these stories are not only stories in South Africa, some of them are in exile. Some of, as I indicated, there are a lot of things that happen to our leaders, and maybe some of them, when she talks about her father tomorrow, you will pick up some of them, because these are stories in prison, these are stories in detention, these are stories in the bushes, but here we are. And however, I always say when I speak to young people, I quote Solomon Mahlangu. When Solomon Mahlangu was one of the leaders of 1976, who then went to join Umkhonto weSizwe. And when Solomon Mahlangu was taken down to the gallows, he said to the Mama, the tree of liberation shall be nurtured by the blood of the martyrs. Tell that to my people. And it saddens us that now some of the blood is the blood that we are hearing now, the pain, and that we have gone through. And we are hoping that one day these stories will come out and become a fruit where our kids can actually enjoy.
We'll open the platform for questions, comments, hands. Ellie?
Sorry, this is not a question. I just wanted to thank everyone for, I can't even start imagining how difficult it is for you to share these stories, that you are sharing them with us, and I really appreciate that.
Okay, thank you very much, even though I didn't raise my hand, but I really, really, really have something to say. It's okay, thank you very much. I've been thinking through all the discussions, and I had to share with a friend outside that this is really, really traumatic, and then I was about crying at some point too myself. And he said that anybody who didn't cry would be a devil also, and then I just don't know. But my question, and is there a way, and because I observed that throughout the whole talk from the different speakers, there is a way we kind of connect back to the young age. I'm very interested in that, and I can see that that is central in the whole discussion. The people who led the protests were young people, and then I want to know, is there a way this traumatic experience inform the way current young South Africans behave? And I'll stop there. Thank you.
You know, I think we're discussing outside, and I was saying one thing that I think we failed to do, particularly for our current younger generation, is that we never had a space post-1994 to sit down like this and tell them of our pain. We owe that to them, as the young people here. And we owe it to them, Prof. A platform needs to be created where we don't just take June 16 pain as just stand up and make a speech. You know, it must be where we cry with our children. I took my daughter, 2 daughters and a son, to Robben Island at some point, where I was at that tender age. I let them stay with me in the cell where I was locked in. They came back very traumatized. I took a group of young people to number 4, they refer to number 4, which is now what you call Conhill. And then I put them in the single cells, what is called amakhulugutu, for 2-3 minutes. And then I said, what was the pain like? But it ended up there. You know, with them, they expressed their pain, how it was painful for those few moments just to be locked in there. Then we then say, we were there for 18 months. Now, I'm wishing, and I'm happy that he's sitting next to me here, that at some point, I don't know, maybe it might be also a project for yourselves, where we bring us together with our children. When I say children, really, I don't mean those we are blood related with, but where there can be this conversation. And my other problem is that, as I indicated, I said this yesterday to students at UJ, that maybe we should apologize as this generation, that we owe it to you to sit down and have this conversation. We failed you on that one. And then the history itself then was distorted. And we are, just to answer you precisely, I think we owe to them a conversation. They need to see us cry. Then they will even understand that the day June 16 is not about just dance, drink, and have a braai. They will know that June 16 is not different from Holocaust. They will know that June 16 is not different from Hiroshima. They will know that we have gone through all those pains. I see you've got your hand up, you want to. Yeah. So, and there's another hand. Can I? Yes. I don't. Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, my brother. I just wanted to respond to your question and maybe add on what Ntate Seth is saying. So,
Ntate Seth is Baba Mazibuko, is dead. So you just calling me dead Mazibuko.
So although Ntate Seth is saying that, you know, we need to see the vulnerability and their experience and understand, I also, as the youth, fear that that might instill fear in terms of action. So that would need to be balanced with something. So I don't know if you've read about Rhodes Must Fall. That took place in Cape Town, which then it was a decolonization protest movement. It was actually inspired by the youth of 76, right? So, of course, it derailed and then it became a fees must fall. When it moved to Joburg, it became a fees must fall movement where university students did not want to now pay fees. How it derailed is a topic for another day. But what I'm saying is that they kept on referencing the youth of 76 for what they wanted. Now, the difference then between Rhodes Must Fall, Fees Must Fall, and 1976 would be that these conversations did not take place in terms of understanding the political history of where they come from, the Black consciousness movement and philosophy. They did not have those lessons to actually expand or actually see their movement come into fruition. So they are constantly young movements that are inspired by the youth of 76, but they do not have the knowledge of the philosophy, the movement in itself. So their protests and movements become a one-day thing, or maybe a one-year thing, then they die off. And it's also important to say that this is not a surprise, because he was just mentioning that we should learn the actual history of 76. I was having a conversation with Mama yesterday, and she was saying that 76, which is very true, I hardly hear people say this, 76 went on for a long time, right? Even after the 20,000 students that took part and hundreds of students died, even after that, there were more massacres. And even when they were, the Black students there were still resisting. They had consumer boycotts. They had they united with their parents to not go to work. You know, they protested. There was even another massacre in terms of where more people were actually killed. So, but they still resisted to the point of creating a military wing. So what I'm saying is that it shouldn't be looked in terms of just the one-day protest, because if it is, then our movements as the youth actually become short-lived, right? And also for just material benefits. So there is that in terms of the youth, but this conversation needs to be had for the history and understand the vulnerability to get strength to carry on if maybe something bad happens. Sorry.
Dumelang. Tharollo, thank you for stealing like the question right out of my head, the point out of my mind. It's amazing. Yes, I was going to touch on the similar point that you were on Fees Must Fall, on Rhodes Must Fall. I was at the Rhodes University when that happened. I was at Rhodes University, and what I just wanted to ask here is, do the elders here recognize the contribution that they have made that enabled us to stand up and say, hey, we would like to challenge the institutions that we have. We would like to challenge the symbology that we have in our country, the symbols we look up to. We'd like to challenge the fee structure and how it excludes quite a lot of like students in a way that we felt was quite unjust. And on top of that, I'm just curious, like when you see us still as the youth having these same engagements, having similar kinds of conflicts and fights, do you guys feel a sense of pride for that, or is it more disappointment that we still have to be rising up in similar ways?
Thank you. Sapili, Bomama Ngai, Abuti Ngai. We owe a lot. And your pain is not unknown. And we must do better. You don't hear me? Okay. Is this better? I want to contribute to answering your question. Why is it with the pain of the events of that year and subsequent years, are the youth today celebrating or memorializing the day in the manner in which they are, which often is disrespectful, it's with disregard? I would say there is ignorance, but this is not ignorance that comes out of nothing. Seth, you mentioned how we need to make this become like how the Holocaust is memorialized, how Hiroshima. You mentioned Hiroshima. You mentioned the Holocaust. Auschwitz is still Auschwitz. June 16 Soweto riot is called Youth Day. That's where it starts. We have removed the truth about the day. We have whitewashed it and said, it's Youth Day, it's a day in a month we're going to celebrate youth. And so what do you see? You see young people celebrate. What we need is to memorialize the day, truthfully recognize what happened that day, because that is what's going to ensure that we become better people, that we are able to heal. There's nothing, I cannot imagine what it's like when on that day, you were running down the streets for your life, and today you are told it's a celebration of youth. Is that correct? No. Perhaps if we want our young people today to do right by this day, let's call it what it is. And on this day, let us walk into the shoes of the 20,000 and ensure that we are a better society for it.
I would allow my ladies, I told you that I'm privileged today, that I only the best of ladies around me. And as an African man, I'm allowed to marry more than one. And, yes, and maybe a prof will also want to respond, but I'd like just to respond on a few of your questions whilst I'm consulting with my wives.
I was going to suggest that we must find a way. There is a problem. Somewhere there is a problem. The problem which separates people, the problem which puts other peoples as victims, others as those who create victims. There's a problem of struggle. How do we define this problem? What is the problem? Because you see, if we don't know what is the problem, we'll consistently go in circles. What is the problem? When you create apartheid, you create it so that what must happen? When you say there is other people must be educated under Bantu education, and other people must be educated under education, what is the problem? Until we define the problem, we'll be going in circles, you know. I was talking about Haiti, because it's the clearest example in the whole world. Here is an island. I don't know how many people are in Haiti.
Less than 7 million.
Sorry?
Less than 7 million.
Less than 7 million. The whole world attacks Haiti. What is the problem? Who has a problem with Haiti, and what is the problem? America has a problem with Haiti. France has a problem with Haiti. There were 3 countries which Britain America, Britain, France, all of them unleashed battalions, bombs, everything on the people of Haiti. What is the problem? What are they looking for? What is it? Why do they have this hatred, this mercilessness against the people? First of all, the majority of the people of Haiti were slaves. Those slaves organized themselves and defeated these three countries. After that, it was known that slaves can fight against any power. They set the example. After that, after they fought, Toussaint, is it? Am I correcting the leader? Toussaint, he was the leader. He mobilized people who were in the millie fields, whatever fields which were there, to fight eventually against America, against Britain, against France. World powers won, and nobody has accepted that it was a victory. Since then, Haiti is hammered every other decade. Why? We should ask this question. Why? What was the reason? We're all intellectuals here, educated, at university levels. Let us define this problem. South Africa now, is under serious hammering. South Africa, as we are speaking, and it's not a mistake that today we have a government of national unity, which is far from what Joyce was fighting for. Far from it. It did not happen overnight. It did not happen by mistake. It was planned that it must be like that. There must be government of national unity, because if there is a government of the majority of the people, something is wrong for somebody. What is this wrong thing? What is this wrong thing if eventually the people of this country rule this country? What is this wrong thing? But somebody has defined it. We have to define it for ourselves and understand whether we agree that it is wrong or it is something that has to be corrected. When Joyce and myself, we were young, and we went underground and we were trained and we were taught one thing. We are going to fight for non-racialism. We are going to fight for non-sexism. We are going to fight for democracy. We are going to fight for a prosperous South Africa. Have these four things been achieved? Why can't we achieve them? I'm saying to you that this morning I received a report which says 683 or 87 graves. We don't know where those graves are, but we know there are those graves. And many times when we dig one grave, they tell us one person is in here. When we dig there, we get 10 people. We get 10 remains. So out times it by 10, that's 683. What is this about? What is this about? Until we ourselves, arrive and say, now this far, not farther. We now know here is a problem. Why are we being denied to create a non-racial country? Why are we being denied to create a non-sexist country? We don't want to kill anybody. Why that? Why are we being denied to say we want a prosperous country? Because this is a rich country. It has all the minerals. It has all the things that human beings need. Why are we being denied to ensure that these are accessible to the nation, not to a group of people, to the nation? Who is denying us to do that? Why? I mean, they will use everything in the world to stop that non-racialism, to stop that non-sexism, to stop that prosperity, to stop us from saying we belong to the African continent. Why? Why? What is the problem? If universities can't answer that, where do we expect to get the answer from? I'll go back a bit. The last time. I said one time, Verwoerd, in 1955, pronounced to the world, to everybody to know, that black people will not be educated, to know science, to know mathematics. Why? He said, for the whole world to hear, because if they do, they'll think they are white. Now that is a superficial definition of a very serious problem, but that's what he said. And therefore they created a special education for black people only, a special education. And that special education taught black people that you are slaves, nothing else. You must work for white people. Why? That education only ended in 1994. 1994, that's when that education stopped. When we said everybody here in this country must be educated. The result is science and mathematics is not accessible to black people because you were taught that you are not as allowed to learn that thing. But that's not the problem. I'm asking us to apply our minds and say, but what is the problem here exactly? Because until we define the problem, we'll go in circles. They'll come and collect us tomorrow and say, what were you talking there at Peterson? And we'll come back and say, they twisted my leg, they broke my toe, they took my tooth without making me not to feel pain and so on. That is a problem, but that is not a real problem. I'm asking us to shift a bit, to begin to say, but what is the real problem here? Why is there such mercilessness once you cross a certain line? Once you cross the certain line where the problem is being defined by other people, once you cross that, there is mercilessness against it. Why?
Yeah. Just before I hand over, there is another, again, in connecting to your question. You see, 1994, new education system comes out, and then we have a new system, a new minister. Challenge every one of you sitting here. Go and check the history books of this country and see how is June 16 addressed. Actually, almost a paragraph. 1. 2, the distortion. June 16, Youth Day. Ask yourself why. The very why that Prof is asking. Ask about June 16. Not only about June 16. Ask about 21st of March. When it is known as Sharpeville Day, but we decided, no, we're not going to call it that. We're going to call it something else. Why? You go to the 25th of September, Heritage Day, 24th of September. We grew up knowing it as Shaka's Day. because there was a victory of African people in that day. Now it's no more that. Why? There's a mandate here, there's an agenda. There's an 16th of December. Why? Why are these historical African promotional victories? Why are they given such a light tone? Huh? No, man. Yes, we know what happened in Sharpeville, but reconciliation. We call them no human rights. We have become too English out of a painful history. I'm not answering the why. Part of why even when they fought the curriculum, the decolonization of curriculum, I think they were also trying to answer that question. Why? Why are we not being told? Maybe even about why not being told about Haiti. You will learn too much. I am appealing to everyone sitting here. In your trying to get the why, try to get why is our own history in South Africa distorted and even misrepresented for that matter. I was telling someone, I was addressing a group of students. This is going to embarrass not only her, but also me. I asked this girl, African black girl, who is Hector Peterson? You know what she said to me? Sarafina. That's how we have even, gets me angry. That's how we have reduced our struggle into Sarafina. That is why our children will go to Sarafina on June 16. We have made our children to be detached from their real self. Steve Biko and other black consciousness should be shaking in their graves as we sit here. And that is why I'm saying that connection, it must be that connection that says June 16 was not one day. I told you earlier on 4th of August, where there was also the impies of Kachabutelezi and all that, the hostel dwellers. It went on, there was also Black Christmas. That year, June 16, one can go on. And that struggle also connects to some of the struggles of these young people. But we have never had to show them how it connects. Maybe, instinctively, if that's a word, they identified with us. But whilst we are answering that, believe you me, in that one paragraph that talks June 16 in the matric paper, I can tell you, there's my name, there's his father's name, there's theatre machine in his name. They ask about a question about us. But let me tell you, a boy staying 3 houses from my house did not know that it was me that they are actually asking about in that question paper. What does that say to us? Why? The other why are we distorting the history of the African people in South Africa? Why are we not telling it as it is? Somebody was saying to me, why is September 11 remaining September 11? But June 16 has got to be given a title. Take another level. I'd like the part of racism. You know who defended us in our trial? The lawyer instructed was Shansheti. Let me be blunt. Muslim, not only Muslim, Indian. Guess what? Shansheti goes to instruct 3 advocates, Jewish. Now, that's why I don't understand what is happening in Palestine. Here is a Muslim with 3 typical Jewish lawyers. Advocates. Bernard Enser, there was another one was Wenzel, and Eric Dane. Behind bars, Jewish women would bring food when we were busy on trial. Will actually bring food to us to eat. I ate halal sometimes to Indian women. I ate halal behind bars and not eat prison meals when we're still waiting trial. Now, and they were doing this for African people. She just told you, the names that she's giving you, they are also Jewish. Now, I am saying why I'm asking that question, but that question should be taken within this context also, that us, you were telling me that SABC, it embarrasses me to tell you that the only documentary that exists about June 16 that tells at least 80% of the truth is BBC. And so SABC buys it to show it, to come and show it in South Africa. What does that say about us? And no, that's the anger side of me, not the crying baby. Okay, but this, all I'm saying that, again, as academics, take that question that Prof is asking, the why. And why even after 1994, we still have a history that doesn't represent us fully. Why?
Thank you. So, as I said, the biggest healing that I had was when I went to Germany, and I found this work by a German man who did a lot of healing after the Holocaust for Germans and Jews. And so you have here a situation of perpetrator, victim, whatever you want to call it. But what I learned in this work is a few things that are very important in healing. A country, a nation, religions, whatever that is when one is excluded. So all stories need to be told, which is why I was very, very grateful to be here today. And stories even of the horrible Verwoerd. Where was he in all of this, and all his families that were creating what was going on? What is their stories?
Colleagues, as indicated, we have a problem, and maybe connected to that central problem, there are other problems around. But unfortunately, we cannot live on this pain and on this problem forever. There is somewhere, I think this is where we are trying to go to. What is it? And I'm sitting here with big brains around me. I don't want to undermine any one of you. What is it that you think we can do? Is it another seminar? Another talk? Young people maybe sitting down and getting into real, why have we landed into these problems that are facing us? And I'm challenging you also, as people who interact with also at other levels. Maybe I should even be asking each and every one of us here to say something. What do you think the problem is? How do you think we can solve it? I'm going to ask, and I'm not just going to, please, giving you 2 minutes. Think, think, think. Think. What is the problem?
I don't know if there's the problem, but if there was, I can assure you I don't have the solution. Let me not answer that, I'm sorry. And say to you, my parents, I don't know what to say, not because I'm ungrateful, mme ngwana o tshwara thipa ka bogaleng. That's a duty that a mother has, to carry the knife on the sharp end. But I don't know what accounts for the pain. I don't know what to say when then you bleed from that pain. Sorry, I'll actually literally use all of the 2 minutes. When you started talking, Ndata Seth, it was very painful for me because I remember learning those stories. And it was difficult for me to understand how come it's so difficult to understand. Personally, let me just say the way I thought it. I was wondering, I was in a rural village in Limpopo, and I was wondering, why is it so difficult? Because I just wanted to understand what it means to be human. And I was like, why is it so hard to be black? I'm not saying pain is the preserve of black people, but I'm saying when you started talking and you spoke about the timelines, how you had to take over from the leadership because there was that vacuum from 1960, I actually thought even back to say, we're talking about school kids here who just wanted to go to school, but the state wouldn't allow that to be a peaceful process. And the state that we're talking about, just for our international colleagues, is, 1948 apartheid South Africa, yes. But to take you a few years back when we talk about distortion of stories and not telling of stories, 1944, one of the closest calls on where the world war would go, the Battle of Al Alamein. There's a man who came from Dube here, who was in the native reserves, Job Masiko. He was in Al Alamein on the Allied side. He was not even allowed to fight with white colleagues. He was arrested, he was a prisoner of war. The Germans made a very big mistake. They stored him near the biggest cache of weapons. He blew that up, and that's what determined the Battle of Al Alamein, and that's what determined how the war went. When he came back, where I live now, I live at Amakhoba. My neighbors are family farms. I'm not going to get into those politics. I don't want to distort. I just want to tell the story that handed down from farms given by the state. I don't want to go to the background of that. But when Lance Corporal Job Masiko came back, his actions were so important that the crown in the island wouldn't ignore that. But because he was black, they couldn't honor him. They had to give his medal to Jan Smuts instead. And he couldn't even make corporal. He could only be lance corporal because he was black. And what he got for his troubles is a pair of boots and a bicycle. When the world was fighting for human freedom, then you can obviously fast track to people who had to run away from their families, to people who had to desert their kids, who were forced and taken out of their homes, that pain. Don't stop telling the stories. We need to learn to listen. Please don't stop telling the stories. Because I want to say thank you. I can't say thank you because it was painful, you see. But thank you very much.
Dumelang, I think in the same camp, it's very hard to say thank you, but I'm sitting here grappling with, we speak about big problems and then the smaller problems. And for me, many of these stories that have been told today touch me more at an interpersonal level. I mean, we speak about, Mama Elia said, I had to be thrown over the fence. I still have the scar, and nothing was done about it. For me, this is bringing it back. You know, we're speaking about all of these human rights problems, all of these wars, all of these things that are, I mean, maybe bigger than my brain at this point. But I'm wanting to grapple with the disservice and the injustice at an interpersonal level where Mama had to leave. I have a 5-year-old. I have a 5-year-old. So I'm imagining having to leave, be separated from my child, only to return, and this child does not recognize me. And my question really, whether we have an answer to that today or not, and I think in the telling of these stories, it's something that we hopefully will be able to achieve. What do I do as a young Black South African daughter of the soil to make it right by you? And that's for me what I'm struggling with. Many of our activists, our freedom fighters, we always speak about, Ndate Seth earlier said, Steve Biko is turning in his grave if he were to see what's happening on June 16. What do I do? How do I make it right? It's in the telling of the stories, but it says to me that there's a bigger project that needs to be undertaken. We've spoken about the injustices of the TRC. We've spoken about whatever you want to call it that happened in that context, in that situation. Yesterday, there was a talk about linguistic injustice that happened at the TRC, right? So we are trying, that's for me what I'm struggling with. I want to make it right. And how do I make it right? By you, Mama Paulina, by you, Mama Joyce, by you, Mama Antoinette. How do I make it right? By you. Whether you answer the question or not, I think it's something else. But I really would like to reflect, maybe in deeper and meaningful conversations outside of the space, to say, how then do we move forward, you know? How do we do the reparative work? What do you see as people who may have had contact with the Steve Biko's and Dr. Mampele's and the Robert Sobukwe's? You are a lot closer to them than we are. What would they have loved to see? And how do we make that right?
I'm going to pounce on anyone.
Before I leave today, I just want to say something as well. So first of all, my intention was not to bring up any other wars, and I had nothing intended with that. And I do believe that that's not our business here today. I think for me, so I just want to finish, because I feel it's unfinished for me. My intention was for everybody to be honored. So when you ask, what do we need to do, is honor those who have sacrificed their lives in this country and focus on this country and how we can build this, not what's going on. We can't really do anything about what's happening in the rest of the world, but what can we do here? Voices that need to be heard. So for me, the way in which I feel healing can happen is when everybody's voices are heard and everybody is honored for the sacrifices that you made. So that lining up, and you can do it another time, but for me it was about honoring everybody that came before you and that come after you, that have sacrificed in many other ways. So I just want to leave with that, and thank you anyway for the opportunity. So that's my belief.
Thank you. I see there is, the move that we're taking is we are looking inwardly, not opening up in answering that question. The question was, what do we need to do and why? You were saying, it speaks to me here. Before I can, I hear you saying, I'm not going to answer you about Mazibuko, but all I'm saying, I'm feeling it here. Here. I'm getting that feel. There is a lot that we still have to do inwardly. Here. Maybe that healing that takes place here will affect somewhere. Like when your example, she's still hurting from the pain when she jumped the fence. It's a struggle here. And we are asking as a child, we are saying, how do I heal you? An old man in the Second World War was only honored with boots and bicycle. What honor is that do we owe that old man in Dube? Are we there? Why? What can we do?
You've got time to think about it. No, you've got time to think now. What can we do? It starts with, we need to have the right to tell our story unedited. The truth of our stories needs to be respected and told unedited. When you do that, yesterday there was somebody that made a presentation working with wrongfully incarcerated people where a whole new persona is developed around a wrong accusation. And as a result, releasing them is not enough. You actually need to correct how people saw them. And one of the things, unfortunately, that are happening is that there is a group of people who believe a lot of what happened, the pain, the injuries, physically, emotionally, psychologically, are exaggerated. And that belief stems from the fact that people have not had the right to tell their story unedited. Things must be softened up. For what? For who? Like the young kids say these days. For what and for who? Who does it serve? It has not served us well. We look around us. Things are getting worse. The memory is being lost very fast. I'm glad, Cosmo, you raised the issue of World War. It's one of my passion areas. Native soldiers from South Africa, from other parts of Africa, contributed to the World War. And the reality is that as much as the South African history, by the way, only says they were there as laborers, had they not been summoned, had the various traditional leaders agreed for these young men not to go to the initiation schools, but rather to join the Queen's regiments, the logistics in France were so bad that the Allied forces were losing the war. Facts that have been proven. And now what you have is the Poppy Day celebrations, and it's all about them. But now you have the Black Poppy, which for the first time last year was recognized by the British. But that's not enough. It is telling our stories, having the right to tell the story. That's where we start. And when you have the right to tell the story unedited, it forces everyone who hears it, those who were the perpetrators, as well as the victims, to then say, this is how we move forward. These are the terms of moving forward. You cannot have terms of moving forward when the truth is not known.
Colleagues, I'm told, do you allow me to take that hand, and then we can. I would have liked you to be in the last. Yeah, I just really want to hear. I want to hear these voices.
Thank you very much, Babu Nzima. My name is Zanele Mazibuko. So I take it we are related somehow. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Good afternoon, and thank you very much, Babu Nzima, Mwelase, Putwini Kondlo, Manzezulu. I'm also a Mazibuko, and I'm sure we are related somehow, Babu Mazibuko, if we can sit down and talk about it. And I'm talking here as a healer who, by every presentation that is done today, I think I need healing myself as a healer. Dr. Sirote or Prof. Sirote is asking me as a healer a problem, a big problem. Doctor, you're posing a big problem to me. You are saying, what is the problem? As a healer, continuously, I believe I am healing. I'm healing other people. Today, we're talking reconciliation. So my challenge as I'm sitting here is, what exactly are we healing and what are we reconciliating? Because there is a reconciliation that needs to happen, but who needs to reconcile and what? Because the pain is deep, but the problem is, what is the creator of that problem? And I'm saying, until we understand the creator, why are we in this situation? We'll be better placed to talk reconciliation. Reconciliation, at this point in time for me, I think it's so crucial. But again, the question is, what do we need to reconcile if we don't understand what is the problem? I think I want to leave it at that. Thank you.
Not only am I understanding that the problem is not only academic, does it not only need academic answers, it also maybe need even deeper and spiritual answers. And as I said, that it's from here, it should go out.
Thank you very much. Sorry. I realize that history can be easily distorted. That's the problem that we have. Okay? But I don't know. I go all over the world talking about what happened on the 16th of June. Can you imagine? I know I cannot reach anyone, but while I'm still alive and well, I'll still go on traveling, spreading the word. For me, that is very, very important. That's how I'm going to leave my legacy. I know people would say you must have a book, you must, not yet. There's so much I want to tell about what happened on that day, and for the youth, what to do and what not to do. It's unfortunate because the very same youth that you are talking about, their behavior, their attitude, it doesn't really match with us. We are talking about old things, they are in the modern way. So somewhere along the line, we are not on the same path. That's my problem. If I tell you as the youth, okay, if you have problems, you don't have to go through the street and toy, especially the youth in schools, because I always go to schools. All you have to do, because you've got problems today, what are you doing with your problems? Gender-based violence, drugs, teenage pregnancy. What do you do about it? It's our problem, but at the end of the day, it's your problem as the youth. You need to take a stand, not only for you, but also for your kids, okay? You are paving way. Who must stand up and fight for those things? Us or you as the youth? It's like you are afraid. You know, in seconds, as a youth, if you have that complaint or whatever issues, you can get about billions of students supporting you with your social media. Unlike us, everything was with the, with the mouth or spread of mouth. But with you, in a second, it's like you're afraid to tackle problems. So I come with my BC before computers. I think you should do this and this. But yourselves, you don't even listen to your parents. I'm a stranger to you. Always you have attitude with your parents, and it starts from home. If you have an attitude with your parent, who am I at the end of the day? That's what I've actually encountered. So the youth have got that attitude, so they are not approachable. We are afraid of them as parents today, and I don't know why. But something is not right between us and the youth. Yes, you may ask question, what should we do? Why are you asking me what you should do? Because you are a youth. You are shaping your future. All I have to do is to support you and motivate. But you have to take a stand as a youth. You've got issues. I have been in the front. You have been at the back. Now it's your turn. We are changing places. I'm going to the back, you are going to the front. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Take a stand, we will support you. Whatever issues you have, even in the schoolyard, this is our issue. You write them down. You just pick it at the gate. When parents and teachers are coming in with their cars, they can see, they can read the message. That's it. They will have a meeting themselves as teachers. Later, it's about you. So that means the two of you are going to sit down and tackle the issue. And not only one school is going to spread to other schools. That's how we are going actually to have, that's how we are going to solve our problems. But while sitting now, like now we are talking after a year, nothing happens. I don't know. I don't know. The youth have to show that, okay, we know what happened. We are where we are because a way was paved for us. Let's go or step in and take action. It doesn't have to be bloodshed. No. Make your point as a youth, then we are going to support you. I can't be telling the youth, hey, you must do this. No, why? I have played my part. All you have to do, if you don't understand, you can come and ask me, but you have to take a stand, and a positive one with responsibility. That's it.
That was directed to the youth. And we are not going to respond. We are going to have your own session where you answer that question. Okay. This is going to be my last speaker, and then it's going to be very short, and then I'll close and hand over back to the chair.
Thank you very much. Actually, I can say that I'm very much worried about South African youth, because since we fought for the country and nothing has happened, and I think we Africans who fought for the country, we need to introspect ourselves, because youth cannot go forward. Because if you want to understand history, you need to understand the past before you go forward. So, talking to the youth of today, as a parent, you know how difficult it is to grow up the child. So they are also looking at us, because we have leaders here. We know what we are expected to do to them. So I was thinking, if we can come together as people who fought for the country with our leaders, try to communicate properly, and then we train, we make sure that we train, we pass the history to youth, so that they should understand actually how are they going, how to go about it, rather than saying, youth, how are they, is because we can say there is a problem in the country, but we cannot just relax and say, youth, go forward. They must get it from us, because we are still alive. We've got the history, all of us. And then maybe we can try to do the road show, go to different schools, make sure that we impart this knowledge. And then secondly, coming to the history, history books. I think we as Africans, we need to make sure that all the history that we have, they should be in black and white, from the primaries up to the tertiaries. Unlike we once learned about Jan van Riebeeck was here in 1582. What about the youth? They don't know those people, but they must learn about our history. I think this is very, very important. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was a young people and older people solution. It still needs to grow bigger than that, and I take it the leaders of this project will take it bigger, because the problem might be also bigger than what we think it is. And maybe we'll have to look at that maybe at another level. In my closing, I lived in 3 stone ages. Stone age number 1, it was in 1976 when I was throwing stones. And I did it and did it very well. I was sentenced and taken to Robben Island. I was made to work in the quarry. I was breaking stones. It was tough. I came out years before 1994, but 1994 came. I'm now gathering stones. I'm in that movement now of gathering stones to build a new South Africa, to build non-racialism, to build non-sexism, to make sure that I don't only succeed as an individual, but as South Africa. My fellow South Africans, I think this is the call that this sitting is making. How do we gather those stones? Young people, how do we gather these stones to build? And you need us, who are throwing these stones, to help you, to say that other stone was somewhere there, and then you can put them together. And all I'm saying, no more blood, but no more blood, no more bullet, but now ballot. No more blood, no more bullet, but now ballot. And thanks to many of young people who voted in this particular election and brought us to some kind of change. Okay, here I am, and thank you very much. And thanks for letting these crying babies cry over your shoulders. God of Africa bless you all.
Thank you very much. I want to thank everybody for having been here, and I'm sure it has not been easy to be here, especially now in the afternoon. It must not be easy, because nothing is easy. I'm hoping that all of us are taking something home which we'll think through and find solutions. I want just to give 2 examples which are a possibility, but for some reason they are not happening. I want to go back to Haiti. In 1804, the slaves won a war. I still call them slaves because they are being made slaves now. Problem has not been solved. But they won a war, and since then they have been relentlessly punished for that. What is the problem? Let's not run away from that problem. What is the problem? In Gaza right now, it is possible to create one state for Jews and Palestinians. It is possible. Why is that country being torn to pieces the way it is being now? What is the problem? I'm not going to answer that. I'm leaving it. I'm doing this because I'm with intellectuals. We're intellectuals sitting here. Here is a problem facing people in Haiti for, what is now, centuries. Why? There is a problem in Gaza. Torn to pieces. Nobody can live there now. Why? Is this not a human problem that we must sort out and say, why is this happening? And find a human solution to it. And I'm saying it is possible in Gaza for the Jews and the Palestinians to stay together. Why are they being denied that possibility? What is the problem? Here, this GNEU, which has been created, it can tear our country to pieces tomorrow. There's no solution in that thing. We were saying we'll do a minority government, and if it fails, we'll go into the opposition and debate. That is denied. Why? We can easily head into tearing this country to pieces. Let us not run away from this problem. When we sleep every day, we must ask ourselves, what is the problem? Seth has said a lot of things which define this problem. Let us not run away from it. Thank you very much.
The University of Johannesburg, the future reimagined.